The Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, a facsimile of the original edition of 1888, printed by the Cunningham Press, Alhambra, California. Book 2, Part 1, Anthropogenesis, stanzas translated with commentaries, from the Secret Book of John. Stanza 5, the evolution of the second race. Subsections, verses 18, 19, and 20. 18. The first race were the sons of Yoga, their sons, the children of the yellow father and the white mother. In the later commentary, the sentence is translated, the sons of the sun and of the moon, the nursling of ether or the wind. Remember in this connection the Tabula Smaragdina of Hermes, the esoteric meaning of which has 7 keys to it. The astrochemical is well known to students, the anthropological may be given now. The one thing mentioned in it is man. It is said, the father of that one only thing is the sun, its mother the moon. The wind carries it in his bosom, and its nurse is the spirituous earth. In the occult rendering of the same it is added, and spiritual fire is its instructor, guru. This fire is the higher self, the spiritual ego, or that which is eternally reincarnating under the influence of its lower personal selves, changing with every rebirth, full of tanya or desire to live. It is a strange law of nature that, on this plane, the higher spiritual nature should be, so to say, in bondage to the lower. Unless the ego takes refuge in the Atman, the All-Spirit, and merges entirely into the essence thereof, the personal ego may goad it to the bitter end. This cannot be thoroughly understood unless the student makes himself familiar with the mystery of evolution, which proceeds on triple lines, spiritual, psychic, and physical. That which propels towards and forces evolution, that is, compels the growth and development of man towards perfection, is A. the monad, or that which acts in it unconsciously through a force inherent in itself, and B. the lower astral body or the personal self. The former, whether imprisoned in a vegetable or an animal body, is endowed with, is indeed itself, that force. Owing to its identity with the all-force, which, as said, is inherent in the monad, it is all-potent on the arupa, or formless plane. On our plane, its essence being too pure, it remains all-potential, but individually becomes inactive, that is, the rays of the sun which contribute to the growth of vegetation do not select this or that plant to shine upon. Uproot the plant and transfer it to a piece of soil where the sunbeam cannot reach it, and the latter will not follow it. So with the Atman. Unless the higher self or ego gravitates towards its sun, the monad, the lower ego or personal self will have the upper hand in every case. For it is this ego, with its fierce selfishness and animal desire to live a senseless life, tanha, which is the maker of the tabernacle, as Buddha calls it in Dhammapada 153 and 154. Hence the expression, the spirits of the earth clothed the shadows and expanded them. To these spirits belong temporarily the human astral selves, and it is they who give or build the physical tabernacle of man for the monad and its conscious principle, manas, to dwell in. But the solar laws, spirits, warm them, the shadows. This is physically and literally true. Metaphysically, on the physical and spiritual plane, it is equally true that the Atman alone warms the inner man, that is, it enlightens it with the ray of divine life, and alone is able to impart to the inner man, or the reincarnating ego, its immortality. Thus, as we shall find, for the first 3.5 root races up to the middle or turning point, it is the astral shadows of the progenitors, the lunar pitris, which are the formative powers in the races, and which build and gradually force the evolution of the physical form towards perfection, this at the cost of a proportionate loss of spirituality. Then, from the turning point, it is the higher ego, or incarnating principle, the nous or mind, which reigns over the animal ego and rules it whenever it is not carried down by the latter. In short, spirituality is on its ascending arc, and the animal or physical impedes it from steadily progressing on the path of its evolution only when the selfishness of the personality has so strongly infected the real inner man with its lethal virus that the upward attraction has lost all its power on the thinking, reasonable man. In sober truth, vice and wickedness are an abnormal, unnatural manifestation at this period of our human evolution. At least they ought to be so. The fact that mankind was never more selfish and vicious than it is now, civilized nations having succeeded in making of the first an ethical characteristic, of the second an art, is an additional proof of the exceptional nature of the phenomenon. The entire scheme is in the Chaldean Book of Numbers and even in the Zohar, if one only understood the meaning of the apocalyptic hints. First comes En Sof, the concealed of the concealed, then the point, Sephira and the later Sephiroth, then the Atzilatic world, a world of emanations that gives birth to 3 other worlds, called the throne, the abode of pure spirits, the second, the world of formation, or Yetzirah, the habitat of the angels who sent forth the third, or world of action, the Asiatic world, which is the earth, or our world. And yet it is said of it that this world, also called Klipoth, containing the 6 other spheres, and matter is the residence of the Prince of Darkness. This is as clearly stated as can be, for Metatron, the angel of the second or Briatic world, means messenger, angelos, angel, called the great teacher, and under him are the angels of the third world, Yetzirah, whose 10 and 7 classes are the Sephiroth, of whom it is said that they inhabit and vivify this world as essential entities and intelligences, whose correlatives and contraries inhabit the third or Asiatic world. Note, see Volume 1, Part 3, God's Monas and Atoms. It is symbolized in the Pythagorean triangle, the 10 dots within, and the 7 points of the triangle and the cube. End of note. These contraries are called the shells, or demons, who inhabit the 7 habitations called Sheba Hakaloth, which are simply the 7 zones of our globe. Note, whence the Kabbalistic term of shells given to the astral form, the body called Kamarupa, left behind by the higher angels in the shape of the higher manas, when the latter leaves for Devakan, forsaking its residue. End of note. Their prince is called in the Kabbalah Samuel, the angel of death, who is also the seducing serpent Satan. But that Satan is also Lucifer, the bright angel of light, the light and life-bringer, the soul alienated from the holy ones, the other angels, and for a period anticipating the time when they would have descended on earth to incarnate in their turn. The souls, monads, are pre-existent in the world of emanations. See Book of Wisdom 8, verse 20. And the Zohar teaches that in the soul is the real man, that is, the ego and the conscious I am, manas. They descend from the pure air to be chained to bodies, says Josephus, repeating the belief of the Essenes. See De Bello Judeo 11 and 12. The air is full of souls, states Philo. They descend to be tied to mortal bodies, being desirous to live in them. De Gignat 222c. De Somnis, page 455. Note, which shows that the Essenes believed in rebirth and many reincarnations on earth, as Jesus himself did, a fact we can prove from the New Testament itself. End of note. Because through and in the human form they will become progressive beings, whereas the nature of the angel is purely intransitive. Therefore man has in him the potency of transcending the faculties of the angels. Hence the initiates in India say that it is the Brahmin, the twice-born, who rules the gods or devas, and Paul repeated it in the 1st of Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 3. Know ye not that we, the initiates, shall judge angels? Finally, it is shown in every ancient scripture and cosmogony that man evolved primarily as a luminous incorporeal form, over which, like the molten brass round the clay model of the sculptor, the physical frame of his body was built by, through, and from the lower forms and types of animal terrestrial life. The soul and the form, when descending on earth, put on an earthly garment, says the Zohar. His protoplastic body was not formed of that matter which our mortal frames are fashioned. When Adam dwelt in the Garden of Eden, he was clothed in the celestial garment, which is the garment of heavenly light, light of that light which was used in the Garden of Eden. Zohar 2, 229b. Man, the heavenly Adam, was created by the 10 Sephiroth of the Yetziric world, and by the common power they, the 7 angels of a still lower world, engendered the earthly Adam. First Samuel fell, and then deceiving man caused his fall also. Deceiving within brackets, question mark. Verse 18 continued. They were the shadows of the Lords. The sentence, they were the shadows of the Lords, that is, the progenitors created man out of their own astral bodies, explains an universal belief. The Devas are credited in the East with having no shadows of their own. The Devas cast no shadows, and this is the sure sign of a good Holy Spirit. Why had they no fire or water of their own? Note. It is corroborated, however, as we have shown, by the esotericism of Genesis. Not only are the animals created therein after the Adam of dust, but vegetation is shown in the earth before the heavens and the earth were created. Every plant of the field before it, the day that the heavens and the earth were made, verse 4, was in the earth, verse 5. Now, unless the occult interpretation is accepted, which shows that in this 4th round the globe was covered with vegetation, and the first astral humanity was produced before almost anything could grow and develop thereon, what can the dead letter mean? Simply that the grass was in the earth of the globe before that globe was created. And yet the meaning of verse 6, which says that there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the earth before it rained, and caused the trees, etc., to grow, is plain enough. It shows also in what geological period it occurred, and further what is meant by heaven and earth. It meant the firmament and dry incrustated land, separated and ridden of its vapors and exhalations. Moreover, the student must bear in mind that, as Adam Kadmon, the male and female being of Genesis chapter 1, is no physical human being, but the host of the Elohim, among which was Jehovah himself. So the animals mentioned in that chapter as created before man in the dead letter text were no animals, but the zodiacal signs and other sidereal bodies. End of note. So why had they no fire or water of their own? Because, as verse 18 continues, they, the shadows, expanded. The spirits of the earth clothed them. The solar laws warmed them, that is, preserved the vital fire in the nascent physical forms. The breaths had life, but had no understanding. They had no fire nor water of their own. That which hydrogen is to the elements and gases on the objective plane, its noumenon is in the world of mental or subjective phenomena, since its trinitarian latent nature is mirrored in its 3 active emanations from the 3 higher principles in man, namely spirit, soul, and mind, or Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. It is the spiritual and also the material human basis. Rudimentary man, having been nursed by the air or the wind, becomes the perfect man later on, when, with the development of spiritual fire, the noumenon of the 3 in 1 within his self, he acquires from his inner self or instructor the wisdom of self-consciousness, which he does not possess in the beginning. Thus here again divine spirit is symbolized by the sun or fire, divine soul by water and the moon, both standing for the father and mother of pneuma, human soul, or mind, symbolized by the wind or air, for pneuma means breath. Hence, in this Smaragdine tablet, disfigured by Christian hands, quote, the superior agrees with the inferior, and the inferior with the superior, to effect that one truly wonderful work, which is man. For the secret work of Hiram, or King Hiram in the Kabbalah, one in essence but three in aspect, is the universal agent, or lapis philosophorum. The culmination of the secret work is spiritual perfect man at one end of the line. The union of the three elements is the occult solvent in the soul of the world, the cosmic soul, or astral light, at the other. And on the material plane it is hydrogen in its relation to the other gases. The two on, truly, the one, whom no person has seen except the sun, this sentence applying both to the metaphysical and physical cosmos, and to the spiritual and material man. For how could the latter understand the two on, the one Father, if his manas, the Son, does not become as one with the Father, and through this absorption receive enlightenment from the divine instructor, Guru, Atma Buddhi? Quote, if thou wouldst understand the secondary creation, so-called, Ulanu, thou shouldst first study its relation to the primary, unquote. Commentary Book of John 3:19. The first race had three elements, but no living fire. Why? Because, quote, we say 4 elements, my son, but ought to say 3, unquote, says Hermes Trismegistus. In the primary circle, creation reads root, as in the secondary likewise. Thus in alchemy or Western Hermetism, a variant on Eastern esotericism, we find sulfur, hydrogium, sal, and flamma, natura, mater, and spiritus, aqua, sanguis. And these 3 are all quaternaries completed by their root, fire. The spirit beyond manifested nature is the fire of breath in its absolute unity. In the manifested universe it is the central spiritual sun, the electric fire of all life. In our system it is the visible sun, the spirit of nature, the terrestrial God. And in, on, and around the earth the fire spirit thereof, air, fluidic fire, water, liquid fire, earth, solid fire. All is fire, ignis, in its ultimate constitution, or I, the root of which is O, 0, naught, in our conceptions, the all in nature and its mind. Pro-mater is divine fire. It is the creator, the destroyer, the preserver. The primitive names of the gods are all connected with fire, from Agni, the Aryan, to the Jewish god who is a consuming fire. In India, God is called in various dialects Ashur, Ensur, Eashur, Esur, Ishur, and Ishvara, in Sanskrit the Lord from Isa, but this is primarily the name of Shiva, the destroyer, and the 3 Vedic chief gods are Agni, Ignis, Vayu, and Surya, fire, air, and the sun, 3 occult degrees of fire. In the Hebrew, Aza means to illuminate, and Asha is fire. In occultism, to kindle a fire is synonymous to evoking one of the 3 great fire powers, or to call on God. In Sanskrit, Oshk, or Ash, is fire or heat, and the Egyptian word Osiris is compounded, as shown by Schelling, of the 2 primitives Aish and Asher, or a fire enchanter. Aesir in the old Etruscan meant a god, being perhaps derived from Asura of the Vedas. Ashvar and Eshvara are analogous terms, as Dr. Kennelly thought. In the Bhagavad Gita we read, Ishvara resides in every mortal being and puts in motion, by his supernatural power, all things which mount on the wheel of time. It is the creator and the destroyer, truly. The primitive fire was supposed to have an insatiable appetite for devouring. Maximus of Tyre relates that the ancient Persians threw into the fire combustible matter, crying, "Devour, O Lord." In the Irish language, Esam or Asam means to create, and Esar was the name of an ancient Irish god meaning to light a fire. See Kennelly. The Christian Kabbalists and symbologists who disfigured Pomander, prominent among them the Bishop of Ayr, François de Tours, in the 16th century, divide the elements in this way. The 4 elements formed from divine substances and the spirits of the souls of nature represented by Saint Matthew, angel man, water, Jesus Christ, angel man, Michael. Saint Mark, the lion, fire. Saint Luke, the bull, earth. Saint John, the eagle, air. Note: to those who would inquire what has hydrogen to do with air or oxygenation, it is answered, study first the ABC of occult alchemy. In their anxiety, however, to identify Pomander in the mouth of mystery with Saint John the Baptist prophetically, they thus identified also the 7 Kabeiri and the Assyrian bulls with the cherubs of the Jews and the apostles. Having, moreover, to draw a line of demarcation between the 4 and the 3, the latter being the fallen angels, and furthermore to avoid connecting these with the 7 spirits of the face, the archangels, they unceremoniously threw out all they did not choose to recognize. Hence the perversion in the order of the elements, in order to make them dovetail with the order of the Gospels, and to identify the angel man with Christ. With the Chaldees, the Egyptians, from whom Moses adopted the cherubs in their animal form, and the Ophites, with all these, the angels, the planets, and the elements were symbolized mystically and alchemically by the lion, Michael, the bull, Uriel, the dragon, Raphael, the eagle, Gabriel, the bear, Tot Sabaoth, the dog, Eratot, the mule, Uriel or Tartarot. All these have a qualificative meaning. End of note. H. The quintessence, Flui, Flammavirgo, virgin oil, Flamma Durissima, Virgo, Lucis Aeterna Mater. The first race of men were then simply the images, the astral doubles of their fathers, who were the pioneers or the most progressed entities from a preceding, though lower sphere, the shell of which is now our moon. But even this shell is all potential, for having generated the earth, it is the phantom of the moon which, attracted by magnetic affinity, sought to form its first inhabitants, the pre-human monsters, Vide Supra, Stanza 2. To assure himself of this, the student has again to turn to the Chaldean fragments and read what Berosus says. Berosus obtained his information, he tells us, from Ea, the male-female deity of wisdom. While the gods were generated in its androgynous bosom, Svabhavat, mother space, its, the wisdom's, reflections, became on earth the woman Omoroka, who is the Chaldean Tavat, or the Greek Thalassa, the deep, or the sea, which esoterically and even exoterically is the moon. It was the moon, Omoroka, who presided over the monstrous creation of nondescript beings which were slain by the Dhyanis. Vide Hibbert Lectures, page 370 et sequens, also in part 2, Adami. Evolutionary law compelled the lunar, quote, fathers, unquote, to pass in their monadic condition through all the forms of life and being on this globe. But at the end of the 3rd round, they were already human in their divine nature, and were thus called upon to become the creators of the forms of destined to fashion the tabernacles of the less progressed monads, whose turn it was to incarnate. These, quote, forms, unquote, are called sons of yoga, because yoga, union with Brahma exoterically, is the supreme condition of the passive infinite deity, since it contains all the divine energies and is the essence of Brahma, who is said as Brahma to create everything through yoga power. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are the most powerful energies of God, Brahma, the neuter, says a Puranic text. Yoga here is the same as dhyana, which word is again synonymous with yoga in the Tibetan text, where the sons of yoga are called sons of dhyana, or of that abstract meditation through which the Dhyani Buddhas create their celestial sons, the Dhyani Bodhisattvas. All the creatures in the world have each a superior above. Quote, this superior, whose inner pleasure is to emanate into them, cannot impart a flux until they have adored, unquote, that is, meditated as during yoga. Sefer Mbo Sharim, translated by Isaac Mayer, Kabbalah, page 109 to 111. Verse 19. The second race was the product by budding and expansion, the asexual form from the sexless shadow. Thus was Ulanu, the second race, produced. What will be most contested by scientific authorities is this asexual race. The second, the fathers of the sweat-born so-called, and perhaps still more the third race, the egg-born androgynes. These two modes of procreation are the most difficult to comprehend, especially for the Western mind. It is evident that no explanation can be attempted for those who are not students of occult metaphysics. European language has no words to express things which nature repeats no more at this stage of evolution, things which therefore can have no meaning for the materialist. But there are analogies. It is not denied that in the beginning of physical evolution there must have been processes in nature, spontaneous generation for instance, now extinct, which are repeated in other forms. Thus we are told that microscopic research shows no permanence of any particular mode of reproducing life, for it shows that the same organism may run through various metamorphoses in the course of its life cycle, during some of which it may be sexual and in other asexual. That is, it may reproduce itself alternately by the cooperation of two beings of opposite sex, and also by fissure or budding from one being only, which is of no sex. Note: see Lang's Modern Science and Modern Thought, page 90. End of note. Budding is the very word used in the stanza. How could these chayas reproduce themselves otherwise, meaning procreate the second race, since they were ethereal, asexual, and even devoid as yet of the vehicle of desire, or kamarupa, which evolved only in the third race? They evolved the second race unconsciously, as do some plants, or perhaps as the amoeba, only on a more ethereal, impressive, and larger scale. If indeed the cell theory applies equally to botany and zoology, and extends to morphology as well as to physiology of organisms, and if the microscopic cells are looked upon by physical science as independent living beings, just as occultism regards the fire lives, there is no difficulty in the conception of the primitive process of procreation. Note on fire lives. See Book 1, Part 1, Stanza 7, Commentary 10. End of note. Consider the first stages of development of a germ cell. Its nucleus grows, changes, and forms a double cone or spindle within the cell. This spindle approaches the surface of the cell, and one half of it is extruded in the form of what are called the polar cells. These polar cells now die, and the embryo develops from the growth and segmentation of the remaining part of the nucleus, which is nourished by the substance of the cell. Then why should not beings have lived thus and been created in this way at the very beginning of human and mammalian evolution? This may perhaps serve as an analogy to give some idea of the process by which the second race was formed from the first. The astral form clothing the monad was surrounded, as it still is, by its egg-shaped sphere of aura, which here corresponds to the substance of the germ cell or ovum. The astral form itself is the nucleus, now as then instinct with the principle of life. When the season of reproduction arrives, the sub-astral extrudes a miniature of itself from the egg of surrounding aura. This germ grows and feeds on the aura till it becomes fully developed, when it gradually separates from its parent, carrying with it its own sphere of aura, just as we see living cells reproducing their like by growth and subsequent division into two. The analogy with the polar cells would seem to hold good, since their death would now correspond to the change introduced by the separation of the sexes, when gestation in utero, that is, within the cell, became the rule. The early second root race were the fathers of the sweat-born. The later second root race were sweat-born themselves. This passage from the commentary refers to the work of evolution from the beginning of a race to its close. The sons of Yoga, or the primitive astral race, had 7 stages of evolution racially, or collectively, as every individual being in it had and has now. It is not Shakespeare only who divided the ages of man into a series of 7, but nature herself. Thus the first sub-races of the second race were born at first by the process described on the law of analogy, while the last began gradually, pari passu, with the evolution of the human body, to be formed otherwise. The process of reproduction had 7 stages also in each race, each covering aeons of time. What physiologist or biologist could tell whether the present mode of generation with all its phases of gestation, is older than 500,000, or at most 1,000,000 of years, since their cycle of observation began hardly half a century ago. Primeval human hermaphrodites are a fact in nature well known to the ancients, and form one of Darwin's greatest perplexities. Yet there is certainly no impossibility, but on the contrary a great probability, that hermaphroditism existed in the evolution of the early races, while on the grounds of analogy and on that of the existence of one universal law in physical evolution acting indifferently in the construction of plant, animal and man, it must be so. The mistaken theories of monogenesis and the descent of man from the mammals instead of the reverse are fatal to the completeness of evolution as taught in modern schools on Darwinian lines, and they will have to be abandoned in view of the insuperable difficulties which they encounter. Occult tradition, if the terms science and knowledge are denied, in this particular to antiquity, can alone reconcile the inconsistencies and fill the gap. If thou wilt know the invisible, open thine eye wide on the visible, says a Talmudic axiom. In The Descent of Man, 2nd edition, page 161, occurs the following passage, which shows how near Darwin came to the acceptance of this ancient teaching. It has been known that in the veritable kingdom one sex bears rudiments of various accessory parts appertaining to the reproductive system, which properly belong to the opposite sex. Some remote progenitor of the whole vertebrate kingdom appears to have been hermaphrodite or androgynous. Note, and why not all the progenitor first races, human as well as animal, and why one remote progenitor? ? End of note. But here we encounter a singular difficulty. In the mammalian class, the males possess rudiments of a uterus with the adjacent passages in the vesiculae prostaticae. They bear also rudiments of mammae, and some male marsupials have traces of the marsupial sac. Other analogous facts could be added. Are we then to suppose that some extremely ancient mammal continued androgynous after it had acquired the chief distinctions of its class, and therefore after it had diverged from the lower classes of the vertebrate kingdom? This seems very improbable, for we have to look to fishes, the lowest of all the classes, to find any still existing androgynous forms. Note then, this seems very improbable. Obviously so on the lines of evolutionism, which traces the mammalia to some amphibian ancestor. End of note. Mr. Darwin is evidently strongly disinclined to adopt the hypothesis which the facts so forcibly suggest, meaning that the primeval androgynous stem from which the mammalia sprang. His explanation runs: the fact that various accessory organs proper to each sex are found in a rudimentary condition in the opposite sex may be explained by such organs having been gradually acquired by the one sex and then transmitted in a more or less imperfect condition to the other. He instances the case of spurs, plumes, and brilliant colors acquired for battle or for ornament by male birds, and only partially inherited by their female descendants. In the problem to be dealt with, however, the need of a more satisfactory explanation is evident, the facts being of so much more prominent and important a character than the mere superficial details with which they are compared by Darwin. Why not candidly admit the argument in favor of the hermaphroditism which characterizes the old fauna? Occultism proposes a solution which embraces the facts in a most comprehensive and simple manner. These relics of a prior androgyne stock must be placed in the same category as the pineal gland and other organs as mysterious, which afford us silent testimony as to the reality of functions which have long since become atrophied in the course of animal and human progress, but which once played a signal part in the general economy of primeval life. The occult doctrine, anyhow, can be advantageously compared with that of the most liberal men of science who have theorized upon the origin of the first man. Long before Darwin, Nordin, who gave the name of blastema to that which the Darwinists call protoplasm, put forward a theory half occult and half scientifico-materialistic. He made Adam the asexual spring suddenly from the clay, as it is called in the Bible, the blastema of science. It is from this larval form of mankind that the evolutive force effected the completion of species. For the accomplishment of this great phenomenon, Adam had to pass through a phase of immobility and unconsciousness, very analogous to the nymphal state of animals undergoing metamorphosis, explains Nordin. For the eminent botanist, Adam was not one man, however, but mankind, which remained concealed within a temporary organism, distinct from all others, and never contracting alliance with any of these. He shows the differentiation of sexes accomplished by a process of germination similar to that of Medusae and Ascidians. Mankind, thus constituted physiologically, would retain a sufficient evolutive force for the rapid production of the various great human races. De Quatrefages criticizes this position in the human species. It is unscientific, he says, or, properly speaking, Nordin's ideas do not form a scientific theory, inasmuch as primordial blastema is connected in his theory with the first cause, which is credited with having made potentially in their blastema all past, present, and future beings, and thus of having in reality created these beings en masse. Moreover, Nordin does not even consider the secondary causes or their action in this evolution of the organic world. Science, which is only occupied with secondary causes, has thus nothing to say to the theory of Nordin, page 125. Nor will it have any more to say to the occult teachings, which are to some extent approached by Nordin. For if we but see in his primordial blastema the giancochanic essence, the chaya or double of the pitris, which contains within itself the potentiality of all forms, we are quite in accord. But there are two real and vital differences between our teachings. Nordin declares that evolution has progressed by sudden leaps and bounds instead of extending slowly over millions of years, and his primordial blastema is endowed only with blind instincts, a kind of unconscious first cause in the manifested cosmos, which is an absurdity. Whereas it is our giancochanic essence, the causality of the primal cause which creates physical man, which is the living, active and potential matter, pregnant per se with that animal consciousness of a superior kind, such as is found in the ant and the beaver, which produces the long series of physiological differentiations. Apart from this, his ancient and general process of creation from proto-organisms is as occult as any theory of Paracelsus or Kunrath could be. Moreover, the Kabbalistic works are full of the proof of this. The Zohar, for instance, says that every type in the visible has its prototype in the invisible universe. All that which is in the lower, our world, is found in the upper. The lower and the upper act and react upon each other. Zohar 186, Vid Infra Part 2, Esoteric Tenets, corroborated in every scripture. Verse 20. Their fathers were the self-born, the chaya from the brilliant bodies of the lords, the fathers, the sons of twilight. The, quote, shadows, unquote, or chayas, are called the sons of the self-born, as the latter name is applied to all the gods and beings born through the will, whether of deity or adept. The homunculi of Paracelsus would perhaps be also given this name, though the latter process is on a far more material plane. The name Sons of Twilight shows that the self-born progenitors of our doctrine are identical with the pitris of the Brahmanical system, as the title is a reference to their mode of birth, these pitris being stated to have issued from Brahma's body of twilight. See the Puranas.